lonely man who travels, yeah, every day.
Ladies and gentlemen, I got Mark Meyer in the room, and Mark's playing a gig here tonight at the Juke joint, and there's been a recent re-release, Mark, of the album Only Human, right?
Yeah.
Recorded when, Mark? Roughly.
Autumn of '79.
May I ask, how old were you when you recorded that album?
Just turned 23, I think.
Give us a bit of a rundown. How did that come about? What, I believe it's a pretty good story, that one, right?
Yeah. It's funny because a lot of people just want to talk about that record, and I did it when I was 23.
Yeah.
But that's fine because it was a great experience, and it was wonderful working with Mark. He's a lovely cat, and wrote great tunes. I was recording Style. I was sort of about to record Stylus's last album, and we'd gone off the road during the recording of it, and actually I think I got that wrong on the post. Stylus's album happened before it, but we'd split the band into two because we weren't touring anymore, and we turned it into two bands, and the bass player that was working in the version of Stylus that I was playing in, just for while we were recording the album, we were just trying to earn some money while we were recording it. The bass player was Joe Creighton, and the guitar player was Ross Hannaford.
Absolutely right.
And I was working with them 4 nights a week in Melbourne, just playing all kinds of stuff, some of Ross's stuff, a lot of Peter Couple stuff, and Sam McNally was playing keys in it. And at that time, Joe just said to me, "Look, Mark Gillespie is doing an album. Do you want to come up to the music farm and do it?"
You hadn't worked with Mark at this point?
No, I'd never met him. I'd never heard of him, and he was new. I think he'd just done the Debutantes album in Melbourne, which was introducing a whole lot of new writers. And he got a deal with EMI, so we went up to the music farm shortly after the Stylus album, and recorded Only Human.
How long did it take you? Just so
We did probably a week of rehearsals and then a week or two of recording. Well, I think probably that first album, probably just a week of recording.
Okay.
So we rehearsed and jammed through for a long time, just to sort of get used to each other. It was
Pretty loose period,
very
or?
Organic way of doing an album, you know.
Yeah.
And it was nice because it was very personal, and
Well, it sounds it, hey?
yeah, it was very personal, and John Sayers, who produced the record, had just built that studio, so it was the very first thing that was recorded in there.
Was it?
Yeah. So we turned up, and it was quite amazing. I mean, there was a lady there that cooked the food for us, and we ate beautiful vegetarian food the whole time we were there, really beautifully made.
Would have been lentils and the whole deal.
Yeah,
right,
we're all.
Byron way.
Well, we're just a bunch of hippies, really.
Yeah.
and so it was a real family vibe, you know. We just got to know each other and hung out and went for walks in the country and did a lot of jamming and rehearsed songs loosely. And when we went in for the recording, we jammed on a lot of things, and again the arrangements changed as we were going. The title track, Only Human, was actually a blow. We were just mucking around with an idea, and Mark didn't. It wasn't a song. Mark just had a chord progression and said, "Let's muck around with this." And I think the third or fourth time we played it, John Sayers pressed the talkback button and said, "Come in and have a listen," and we were all in shock. We said, "What are you talking about? We're just having a jam here." And he said, no, come in. You know?
Great.
So we came in and had a listen to it, and he just looked at Mark and said, "Write some lyrics." So that was the title track of the album. It was just a jam.
Unreal.
But sort of had moments in it that were kind of nice, and he wanted to keep those on the record.
Harmony singers in that band, on that record?
Yeah, Lisa Bade.
Lisa Bade?
Yeah, Lisa Bade, who's a great sort of soul singer from Melbourne, and Joe Creighton.
And Joe Creighton, yep.
Joe's got a beautiful high, you know, he sings great high harmonies. Really soulful. The both of them were great together. Rex Bullen came in after the fact and put keyboards on it. And Rex was from Renee Gay's band.
Okay.
So it was basically Ross Hannaford and Joe Creighton and myself and Mark.
Yeah.
Mark played a lot of dobro on the record, and quite a bit of electric guitar as well.
Who played the slide on Suicide Sister?
I think a lot of that was Mark.
Was it?
Yeah.
I always sat there thinking it was Ross Hannaford playing that. So.
Yeah, a lot of the chicken picking stuff that happened through that record was Ross.
I love chicken
Just,
picking.
so do I. Yeah, Ross did some amazing things on that record. I mean, Ross did some impossible things, and so he was very quiet, but the sweetest guy you ever want to hang out with. He was just a lovely guy. He could poke fun at himself, and he had a lot of humility.
Beautiful.
And he was just a beautiful player. I mean, I was just a kid, and most of these guys were 9 or 10 years older than me. So I just thought I'd made the decision when I got on the plane that I was just going to shut up and do what I was told. So I basically did that, you know, and soaked up everything. You know, I knew I needed to learn, so I soaked up everything. Everything was offered to me in suggestions.
Was that your natural calling when you were in studios at that point?
It always was.
Yeah. Well, you come across like that.
Because there's, you know, a great record is always it's about collaboration, and I always find that whatever record I was going into play, they would expect different things from me.
Yeah.
And I wanted that. I actually wanted that because I wanted to grow. So playing with those guys was awesome for me to just be there, to be in the same room as those guys. You know. Joe Creighton's a monster, you know. He's the sweetest guy too. He's so funny, you know. I've been at dinner with Joe and sat down while he told jokes for like 2 hours and had the whole restaurant laughing, you know.
There's lots I'd love to ask you.
Yeah.
Just a quick fact, how many albums have you played on roughly?
I honestly don't know, because so many of them went by the wayside, and it was a bit of a blur for about 20 years or so. I just did an interview with Drum Scene magazine, and we figured that it was in the hundreds, but you know, whether it was 200, 300, 400.
I think you listed over 300 online or something.
Yeah, something ridiculous.
I remember looking.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah.
But you know, I mean, a lot of those go by the wayside because they, you know, record company hassles or acts sort of aren't keeping people happy, and that things don't get released, and all kinds of things happen with a lot of those records. And some of them are released and they fizz, so you don't hear about them.
I mean, but, you know, but well, and anyway, a great record is a great record is a great record.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And that's the beauty of doing this stuff, isn't it? Is that
Well, you know, luckily, I guess 40 or 50 of them became really big, which is handy, you know, because when they do well, you know, you get called again for something else.
Yeah, absolutely. So Mayday in Arcadia, that was all pre-written, or did that come up organically? Or
No, the lyrics were all there. The song was basically there, but we just threw around a few arrangement ideas and came up with what we came up with.
Fantastic. Engineering. So
John Sayers engineered it and produced it and built the studio.
So he would have been lit up because it's the first project, right? Now you guys in there doing it.
But John was already, you know, a legend. I mean, he recorded Chain way back. You know, he was the guy in Melbourne for producing acts, and got to that stage in life where he just wanted to slow down a bit right before we did that record. So that's why he went up there to the farm and built that.
Unbelievable.
And we've lost Ross. We've lost Ross, of course, which was very sad. And we've lost John as well. And the second album, we had John French engineering and John Sayers producing. John French is another Melbourne engineering and producing legend. He's worked with everybody as well. And we've lost John French as well, unfortunately. So the two guys are on the desk for that second album, and the one guy who was on the first album are both gone.
And can I talk a bit drum talk for a second? So I spoke to you about this the other day, but listening in headphones to that album, and particularly I guess the remixed version, which is remastered, right? The decay on the cymbals and the split left to right, and every cymbal sounds like it's been produced immaculately. You know what I mean? Every strike feels as though it's been...
Yeah, he'd spent a few weeks before we got there experimenting, and he had the kit there already. You know, those toms were Sona kit, and there was no bottom heads on the kit, which is bizarre to me, but it sounded incredible.
Oh,
but that's, you know, that's because of John. He just knew what he was doing.
Yeah.
And you know, he used PZM mics pretty
Right.
much exclusively for the drums. You know, even over
Quality.
plate mics. You know,
Yeah.
people didn't take them very seriously, but John, when they first came out, John loved them. He loved the expanse of EQ you got out of them.
Yeah.
You got a real sizzle out of the cymbals with those.
Oh, he did, and that's the word, isn't it?
Yeah.
There's a sizzle there.
Yeah.
There's no...
There's a sparkle in them.
Yeah, there's no hard baked bean can sound.
Yeah.
You know, that's a terrible description, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's no clangy.
But he was very into mic placement too. He knew the sweet spots in the room.
Everything was independently mic'd on the kit.
Yeah,
remember?
everything was independently mic'd. I think he had three mics on the snare drum. One on the rim, one underneath, and one on top. One on the shell.
Incredible.
Yeah.
Having you play again in the joint
Thanks,
tonight's
mate.
great, mate. I
always
really
good to be
enjoy it, and I'm going to finish up with a little bit, and that's you went to Norwood High, right?
Norwood Tech.
Norwood Tech,
Marriotteville.
Marriotteville. Is that what it was at the time? Or?
It's the reason I'm still playing music. It's because Eric Bryce was there.
Right.
And Eric Bryce started the music program in the school, which was the first public school music program in Australia. And he was an amazing guy, an amazing mentor for so many great players. You know, I mean, Billy Cobham's travelling around with a guitar player called Carl Orr. You probably know of Carl.
Yeah.
You probably remember Carl.
Yeah.
Lovely guy and a great guitar player. Carl's one of his students. I mean, so many of you know, Graham Conn and Dave Colton, guys that have gone out, their tentacles have reached New York and London. And
So he just lit the wick, did he? He just
Totally,
absolutely lit
totally,
the wick.
because he had no prejudices. He was a fabulous jazz piano player.
Yeah.
He did arrangements for the South Australian Symphony. He did arrangements for the Ernie Sigley Show.
Did he?
Half the guys in the Ernie Sigley Show were his students.
Right, there you go.
Yeah, you know, so a lot of guys were kicked off by Eric. Started off. He was just fabulous. He didn't have any prejudices. You know, we'd play anything. You know, we'd do the sabre dance, and we'd do classical pieces, but we'd play Jimi Hendrix songs and Beatles songs as well.
Unreal.
And at the end of every year, we'd do an album.
I believe you went in there. You weren't going to play drums, or did he found he
I'd been playing violin when I did 6 or 7 years of classical violin, and I'd sort of stopped that at the end of primary school. And he just brought me into the music room, and I got rezoned there because I was supposed to go to Campbelltown High. I was zoned.
I thought you said Countdown High. That's hilarious.
Campbelltown High.
Campbelltown High.
Yeah, I was zoned for Campbelltown. But two of the guys in the school orchestra who played violin, two of us, our music teachers went to the education department and said these guys probably should keep playing music. So they rezoned me. So I had quite a bike ride to school from Felixstowe all the way to Marriotteville. And so because of that, I think Eric got us both in, and he just happened to sit me on the drum kit and said, "What can you do on this?" And I'd been playing a lot of football and cricket, and I was fairly well coordinated, and I was in love with the Beatles and
Yeah.
you know,
Is that weird?
I was in love with the Monkeys too. I love
Well,
the Monkeys.
yeah, so did I.
But you know, that's Hal Blaine on drums. You know.
Yeah, right. Absolutely. Was that that was the Wrecking Crew, wasn't it? Did a bunch of that, or was that the Wrecking Crew?
No, well, not necessarily. It was
Okay.
a mix of players, but Hal Blaine pretty much played all the drums.
Okay.
And he also helped Mickey Dolenz before he went on tour.
Okay.
He gave him lots of lessons.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Brilliant. All right, Mark. Thank you so much.
Hey.
Absolute pleasure meeting you again, seeing
Great
you
being
again,
here, mate.
talking again, hearing you play. Every time I watch you play, you know, it's like you go and you see someone play, and you always pick things up, you know,
Yeah.
and it's so. I really appreciate it.
Thanks,
you, my
mate.
friend.
Cheers. Lovely to be here.
Cheers, mate. On you, mate.
Goodbye, baby, so long. Goodbye, baby, so long. So long.